Hey there, welcome to Hobby on YouTube. I'd like to talk about something I've talked about before, but I think it bears repeating, and I only talked about this in one video, and I've got so many videos, it's quite possible somebody watching this video never saw the other video. But what I'd like to talk about is how you can get a nice, high-quality, vintage Boker Scout Knife on the cheap. And that is by looking for the John Primble Belknap name brand. So there used to be this hardware company named Belknap. It was founded all the way back in 1840 by a guy by the name of W.B. Belknap in Louisville, Kentucky. At one time, it was the largest hardware company in the world. But they specialized in a lot of things, and one of them was cutlery. And they sold knives by lots of different cutlers like Winchester and Russell, Robinson, Schrade, Boker. Usually under house brands. Their house brands were Pine Knot, Bluegrass, John Primble India Steelworks, and John Primble. But the company Belknap Hardware was completely out of business by 1985, and I think a lot of those house brand names were bought up by Bluegrass Cutlery of Ohio. They acquired the rights. You can still buy John Primble knives, but they're just fake. They're made in China, and they have nothing to do with what I'm getting ready to show you. So I have a Boker USA, very early Boker USA Scout Knife here to show and compare these John Primbles to, along with a Valley Forge branded Boker USA Scout Knife, and then two John Primble Belknap knives. This is a very early Boker USA Scout Knife, and these are hard to come by and can be pretty expensive. The same with the Valley Forge. It's almost identical. This one's a little later because it has ring bolsters and a few other minor differences. This one has the tag stamp, if I can get it, in the light Valley Forge. And here you can see the tag stamp. And they always had a V and a circle on the back. But Valley Forge, that tag stamp, Boker USA quit using that tag stamp in 1950. I mean, they made Boker USA knives and Valley Forge knives side by side out of the same plants up until about 1950. But, that's how Boker USA got started. They bought Valley Forge in like 1899, I believe. Somewhere along the line, Boker started making scout knives for Belknap Hardware under the John Primble house brand. And as you can see, here's one. It's very similar to this Valley Forge knife. They do have bone handles and the gimp shield, the spanner shield. Boker didn't start using Delrin handles and round shields until the mid-60s, really. And with the tang stamp and the shield and some other information, we can date these type of knives from the 1950s to early 1960s. So let me just show you the tang stamp on this one. It reads John Primble, top line, and then Belknap Hardware and Manufacturing Company. So that tang stamp was used from 1940 to 1968. Now there are other John Primble tang stamps. So the earliest one is John Primble India Steelworks, and that tang was from 1890 to 1940. There's just a John Primble. That tang stamp also 1890 up to 1985 when Belknap went out of business. And then there was a John Primble Belknap Inc. And that tang stamp ran from 1968 to 1985. But this one from 1940 to 1968. And on these Belknap Hardware, these John Primble Belknap Hardware Boker-made scout knives, you're always going to find this model number on the reverse. Well, I can't say you're always going to find it, but when you do find it, the model number is 3335. as opposed to Boker's number, which is what, 9361. And they're always going to have a star below the model number. So that's how you know it's a Boker. And this one has a blade etch. That's why I picked it up. I already had one in fine shape, but I found this one, and it's got this great blade etch. John Primble, finest steel, and in the badge there it says Goods of Honor. Primble, Goods of Honor. See if I can get that to show up a little better. They had these nice long nail pulls. They're just really high quality. Belknap, for the John Primble name, really only wanted the finest knives. They were very nice knives. And while this knife may have been made like in 1950 or early 1960s, it absolutely rivals the quality of these very early Boker Scout knives from the 20s or 30s. So every knife is a bit as nice as the pre-World War II knives. Here you can see brass liners and a really thick brass spacer there that lends strength to the knife. Lined nickel silver bolsters. This pinned-on shield. Bone handles with a really nice jigging. I like this. It's kind of like pocket worn, and it's got a great color. And then a nickel silver pinned-on bail. Now by this time, you had sort of a safety can opener. This is Boker's attempt kind of at a safety can opener, not the old style can opener that you would find on these earlier knives. You can see they've also changed the position of it to the main blade end. So they've swapped that position with the screwdriver cap lifter, and they give you a much longer screwdriver cap lifter. And then the main difference is, instead of an awl, at this point in time you see a pen blade, a secondary pen blade. And on these older knives, here's the Valley Forge. It's very similar to the Boker, and it has the awl. I think this is a more practical knife, more modern knife. Certainly the can opener is more modern and practical. You could have an argument, I'm sure, over what's more useful, the pen blade or the awl or reamer. I prefer the awl or reamer since I've already got a blade, but I think more people might use this. So that's the setup. So these knives were made by Boker USA before they started getting bought out and traded around. This knife was made before 1965, when New Britain Machine Company bought Boker USA. And then it was only 3 years later, in 1968, they were absorbed into Litton Industries. And then in 1970, it was acquired by J. Weiss and Sons. And then 1976, acquired by Cooper Industries. And in my opinion, every time that happened, the knives got cheaper and rougher. Certainly this is a nicer knife with the pinned-on shield and the bone handles, and it just was made, just like the old ones, I think. They're a little different dimensions. You can see that it's a little thicker, and I'm sorry, like wider this way. And also I noticed that of the two John Primbles I have, they're slightly different sizes, and I'm not sure which one is older, which one's younger. But this one you can see is even wider than this one. And the blade, they both have blades with long nail pulls and swedges, but this blade is a wider blade. And it's not due to wear. They both have nice little sharpening choils. You can see there's not a lot of wear on either one of them. This one does not have the blade etch. Probably did originally, but it was probably polished off. Does have the exact same tang stamp. John Primble Belknap Hardware and Manufacturing Company. And then on the back, the model number 3335 and the star. Does have the lined bolsters, the pinned-on shield, the pinned-on nickel silver bail, brass pins, bone handles. Looks like the jigging might be just slightly different. maybe not, but certainly a little different color. That could just be, you know, from the run of the bone die. But this is a great knife. This one is in really good shape. I wasn't going to buy another one until I came across this one with the blade etch. I couldn't resist. There's that two-piece Boker can opener. Looks a lot like the one they still use on their sport messer. Just a long screwdriver cap lifter and small pen blade. So yeah, it's harder to find the old Bokers. It's hard, the old Bokers, not the newer ones that maybe like this, or you have the Delrin shield, Delrin handles and the round shield. But to find the really old bone-handled Boker USAs, a little tougher. They're a little more popular and go for more money. Harder yet, I think, to find the Valley Forge brand. That was not really just like any hardware company's house brand. That was Boker's other line, Valley Forge. That's how Boker USA really got started making knives, as they bought Valley Forge cutlery. And but Boker only used that Valley Forge tank stamp up until 1950. So back to my original point. I've been rambling, but these can be had on eBay pretty cheaply, and I don't know why. I think it's because maybe a lot of people don't really know that they're Bokers. You know, I've read that knives with the manufacturer's tank stamp are always going to carry a higher price than maybe the exact same knife with some kind of house brand tank stamp. You know, like John Primble. But it's the exact same knife. And I think it's a cool story. I think, you know, you not only get the Boker USA story, but you get the Belknap hardware story as well. And so there's opportunity out there if you want to get a really well-made vintage scout or camp knife, one made by Boker USA, kind of in their heyday of production and quality, to look for the John Primble, Belknap's John Primble brand. And I think you might be able to pick one up really reasonably. Okay, guys. Hey, thanks for watching, and